It is 9:47 on a Tuesday night, and a 54-year-old man is sitting alone in his kitchen with the television on for the noise, not the picture. The dishes from dinner are already washed and put away, because that is what he does now, immediately, out of habit rather than necessity. His phone sits face down on the counter. He glances at it every few minutes, not because he expects a message, but because some part of him still hopes for one. He scrolls through his contacts sometimes, late at night, reading names the way other people read old letters. A college roommate, a guy from his first job, a neighbor from a house he sold years ago. He does not call any of them. He tells himself it is late, that they are probably busy, that there is nothing urgent to say. The real reason is quieter than that. He has forgotten how to reach out without a reason. Somewhere along the way, just calling to talk stopped being something he knew how to do. He turns off the kitchen light, walks past a hallway full of photographs, and goes to bed in a house that is clean, orderly, and almost entirely silent. If this scene feels oddly familiar, you are not alone in that recognition, even if the feeling underneath it is something closer to emptiness than loneliness. Psychologists have a name for the gap between how a man appears and what he actually feels, a kind of functional numbness that lets him keep performing while something essential quietly goes unfelt. Watch closely and you will notice the pattern repeating in men who look, from the outside, entirely fine. He keeps a full calendar of obligations but an empty calendar of company. He remembers birthdays but rarely mentions his own struggles. He can fix a broken fence, manage a mortgage, navigate a health scare, and comfort his children through heartbreak, yet he cannot bring himself to text an old friend and say, "I miss talking to you." He measures his days by what he accomplished, not by who he spoke to. When someone asks how he is doing, he says, "busy," because busy sounds better than honest. He has learned to mistake being needed for being known. He can walk into a room full of people at a family gathering and still leave feeling like no one asked him a single real question. Notice how the habit shows up in small, almost invisible ways. He will spend 20 minutes helping a coworker troubleshoot a problem that has nothing to do with him, but he will not mention that he has not slept well in weeks. He keeps a mental list of people he should call, a list that only grows longer, never shorter, because adding a name to the list feels easier than actually dialing it. He has become fluent in small talk and almost illiterate in real talk. Ask him about a game score or a project at work, and he will talk for 10 minutes without pausing. Ask him how he is really doing, and the sentences shorten immediately, as if some internal editor is cutting the words before they reach his mouth. This is not weakness. It resembles what psychologists sometimes call emotional suppression, a learned habit of pushing feeling below conscious awareness until the feeling itself becomes difficult to locate. It is a rehearsed, quiet, functional kind of isolation that so many men have practiced for so long that it no longer feels like a choice. It feels like personality. None of this happened by accident. For decades, male friendship in most Western cultures was built around shared activity rather than shared emotion, the job site, the sports league, the military unit. These structures gave men proximity without requiring vulnerability, and that arrangement worked as long as the structures stayed in place. But as men age, the structures dissolve. Jobs end. Teams disband. Children grow up and friendships once tied to school pickups fade along with them. Researchers who study adult friendship have found that men's social circles shrink dramatically after their 30s, while the emotional skills required to rebuild connection without a shared task were never taught in the first place. Society handed men a script for friendship dependent on circumstance, then removed the circumstances, and never wrote a new one. There is also a generational layer to this. Many of these men watched their own fathers model exactly this pattern. A man who provided, who rarely spoke about anything beneath the surface, and who was, by the standards of his time, considered good and successful. That template was inherited quietly, through observation rather than instruction, a process psychologists call social learning. Retirement, when it comes, often removes the last structure that gave a man regular contact with other people, and what remains is frequently silence, disguised as freedom. He tells himself he finally has time for everything, then discovers that time was never the obstacle. Knowing how to use it to reach another person was. To understand why so many men struggle with this, you have to go back further than adulthood, back to the earliest lessons about what a boy is allowed to feel, the period developmental psychologists point to when discussing attachment style, the blueprint a child forms for how safe or unsafe it is to need someone. From a young age, many boys are met with quiet correction whenever emotion becomes visible. Crying gets a raised eyebrow. Fear gets brushed aside with "you're fine." Sadness gets redirected into activity. Go outside, go do something. Over time, certain emotions are labeled unacceptable and rerouted into acceptable substitutes. Irritation instead of hurt, humor instead of grief, silence instead of need. It is a survival strategy built through emotional regulation learned under pressure, and it often hardens into what psychologists describe as an avoidant pattern of relating. Comfort with self-reliance paired with discomfort around emotional closeness. By adulthood, the strategy has become automatic. Many men simply experience life as someone who handles things, without noticing how much handling has replaced feeling. Identity gets built around competence and self-sufficiency, because those were the traits praised, while emotional openness was, at best, tolerated and, at worst, quietly mocked. Some researchers use the term alexithymia to describe a related difficulty. Not an absence of emotion, but an impaired ability to identify and put words to what is being felt in the first place. A man raised this way does not reach midlife lacking emotions. He reaches midlife lacking practice putting them into words, and lacking practice believing anyone actually wants to hear them. Here is where the real tension lives, the part that rarely gets said out loud. Men want connection, and men avoid the very things that would create it. They miss friendship, yet they do not call. They crave being understood, yet they hide the details that would allow anyone to understand them. A man can feel a genuine ache of loneliness on a Sunday afternoon and still choose to mow the lawn instead of picking up the phone, because mowing the lawn feels productive and calling feels exposed. This is not hypocrisy. Psychologically, it functions closer to a defense mechanism, an unconscious strategy the mind builds to avoid a threat it cannot name directly, and the tension between wanting closeness and avoiding it produces something close to cognitive dissonance, two truths that cannot comfortably coexist, so one gets quietly buried. It is the quiet math of self-protection. If I do not ask, I cannot be turned down. If I do not admit I am struggling, I cannot be pitted. If I do not need anyone, I cannot be disappointed by anyone either. Independence, once a source of pride, slowly becomes a wall built one small avoidance at a time. Notice the shape this contradiction takes in ordinary moments. A man will drive 2 hours to help a friend move furniture without being asked twice, yet he will not ask that same friend to simply sit with him after a difficult diagnosis. He will show up at a funeral in a pressed suit and still not call that grieving friend 3 weeks later, once the casseroles stop arriving and the real loneliness of grief sets in, because by then it feels like too much time has passed to reach out at all. He wants his sons to be more emotionally open than he was, yet he still changes the subject the moment his own son asks him something real. The cruelest part of the contradiction is that most men do not even see the wall as something they built. They see it as simply who they are. So the question worth sitting with is not why men feel empty, but why that emptiness feels safer than reaching out. What would it cost a man to send that text to an old friend? Is he afraid of rejection, or of what it would mean about the years he spent not reaching out sooner? Is silence really peace, or simply the absence of a demand? There is a difference between solitude a man has chosen and emptiness he has quietly inherited, and most men have never stopped to ask which one they are actually living in. Is being needed by everyone the same as being known by anyone? A man can be central to an entire family's functioning and still be a stranger to every person in that house when it comes to what actually keeps him up at night. Perhaps the truth is this: independence and connection were never supposed to be opposites, even though they have been treated that way for most of a man's life. Self-reliance is not the enemy of closeness. It becomes the enemy only when it is used as a permanent substitute for it, a shield mistaken for an entire self-concept, the internal story a man tells himself about who he is and what he is allowed to need. Every man who sits alone with a phone he does not pick up is not broken and not weak. He is simply carrying forward a set of rules he never chose and never fully examined, rules that told him strength meant needing no one, and that message, absorbed early enough, is difficult to unlearn even when every part of him is tired of it. The ache he feels on a quiet night is not proof that something is wrong with him. It may be proof that something in him remembers what connection used to feel like, and has not entirely given up on it. There is no tidy resolution here, no 5-step plan, no line to make it feel solved. Somewhere tonight, another man is sitting in another kitchen, scrolling through the same kind of silent contact list, telling himself the same reasons it is not the right time to call. He is not unusual. He is one of millions living the exact same quiet contradiction, wanting closeness while protecting himself from the vulnerability closeness requires. He will probably go to bed without calling anyone, the way he did last night and the night before that. And somewhere else, another man just like him is doing precisely the same thing, wondering in the last few minutes before sleep whether anyone else feels this way too.